Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started on time. If everybody can just mute your microphones, that would be appreciated. And just as a reminder, this call is being recorded. If anybody has any questions at any point, please just type it into the chat, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end, and I'll read the questions to the appropriate party. So if you have anything you want to ask, just type it into the chat. We'll do it at the end. Vladimir, over to you.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We're thrilled to see so many dedicated professionals from water and wastewater utilities joining us today to delve into this critical topic. In recent years, the landscape of cybersecurity threats has evolved dramatically. Cyber attacks have become a sobering reality for organizations, especially those tasked with managing essential services like water and wastewater. Our reliance on interconnected systems and technologies have never been greater. While these advancements bring tremendous benefits and efficiencies, they also introduce vulnerabilities that can be exploited by malicious actors seeking to disrupt our operations and jeopardize public safety. The importance of securing our water and wastewater infrastructure cannot be overstated. The consequences of a successful cyber attack on these systems can be catastrophic, potentially leading to service disruptions, contamination, and widespread health risks for our communities. Fortunately, we're not facing this challenge alone. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, stands as a beacon of support and guidance, offering expertise, resources, and collaboration to help safeguard our critical infrastructure against cyber threats. Today, we have assembled a panel of experts who will share their insights, experiences, and strategies for partnering with CISA to enhance our cyber resilience. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our experts. Donald Hester is a seasoned cybersecurity advocate with 25 years of experience in various roles, including auditor, educator, and manager. In 2023, he joined CISA as an advisor in San Francisco, focusing on Northern California region. Before CISA, Don was the cybersecurity manager at City of Livermore. Bill Johnson, and his experience includes 33-year tenure in IT and 18 years focusing on cybersecurity, serving as the IT security manager at East Bay Municipal Utility District. David Yu is a cyber and information security expert with 28 years in tech. As an IT manager for Alameda County Water District, he oversees both on-premise and cloud infrastructures, advancing the district's cybersecurity program. Jeffrey Brown combines decades of experience in engineering and management across various sectors, with a recent focus on water SCADA systems and cybersecurity at Alameda County Water District, where he currently serves as an operations system administrator. Don, please take it away.
Thank you, Vladimir. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with everybody and let you understand a little bit about how CISA works and how we like to partner with local, state and local agencies, particularly water. We know that water is vital for our nation's security and for health and safety, obviously, so it's super important. So I want to go over just a little bit and introduce what CISA is and what our role is. I run into this all the time where people think that we're either law enforcement or they think we're regulatory, and we're neither of those things. We're actually here to collaborate with you. Part of that is making sure that we can advise you on risks, make sure that you understand what the threats are. And so we have different means of doing that. In addition to that is to then help you address those risks. Some of the things that we offer services or guides or resources to help you address some of those risks. I want to point out that we are very collaborative. Because we're not law enforcement, because we're not regulatory, our role is really to meet with you and help you on your journey to becoming more cyber resilient at the end of the day. our goal is to help make sure that the American infrastructure is secure and resilient and reliable. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that people can turn on water and water comes out the faucet, right? We certainly don't want a cyber event to impact that. And there's a lot of threats that are out there today, and we could talk about them all day long. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. I just want to make sure that you understand that we do have a lot of risks out there. Everything from ransomware that's really popular right now to advanced persistent threats from different nation states that have an impact on our critical infrastructure. Also, just external dependencies, other agencies that you may rely upon for your services. If they are impacted, that may impact yours. We've seen in the past where a vendor account and a vendor login gets compromised, and then it becomes the way that threat actors get into your networks. And so that's a concern that we definitely have. And then, of course, social engineering is like the number one, right? You've all gotten the phishing emails, asking you to go buy gift cards or click a link or log into something. And threat actors are getting better and better at that. In fact, they're starting to leverage AI to either clone people's voices, clone videos of people, or just to make a really good sounding email. So a lot better than it used to be. It used to be you could tell a phishing email a mile away because you'd read it and you'd be like, oh, that person doesn't, English isn't their first language, right? You could easily tell that. So you could dismiss it. But now, with AI, they can make it sound really, really convincing. There's a lot of different things they can do. We're not as concerned in the water sector with data theft or cryptojacking, although those are things we certainly don't want to have happen to you. But we're really more concerned about either destruction of ICS systems or placing a ransomware on your systems, right? Those are the two big areas that we're concerned about. And I don't want to leave out collateral damage. We saw with the PLCs that were being attacked by the Israeli manufactured PLCs that were being attacked by cyber terrorists associated with Iran. When they were attacking those PLCs, they were attacking them wherever they found them. So it didn't matter whether or not you were a part of their political statement or not. They were just attacking them. So just by the means of you having them and having the vulnerability meant that you could have been impacted by that. And we saw a lot of organizations impacted by that, actually. So, we also have to take into consideration the threat actors are diverse. We have everything from nation states to insiders. Nation states have a lot of resources that they can put forward to it. And I'll speak more about that here in a minute. We have hacktivists, which have now just recently increased now that we have the Palestinian Israel war going on right now, that a lot of hacktivists are taking sides on that, are now launching attacks. So that was something that kind of it comes and goes with what's going on over whatever's going on in politics. We have cyber criminals that are always just out trying to make money, so they're not really trying to destroy systems. They really want you to be able to recover the system because they want to have you pay. So they're just looking for it. And then we have insiders, and there's that example of that water treatment plant that was in, I think it was Australia, that had been hit by a former employee who was disgruntled and logged into the system and allowed wastewater to just flow into the river, right? That becomes an environmental issue and a hazard to the environment and people around there. So it has a big impact. What's more concerning, I think, is if you saw on January 31st a recent reporting to Congress by the FBI director, CISA director, and others, Cyber Command and others, talking about the threat that China poses to critical infrastructure partners. And so when I say that, I'm pointing at all of you and us too, right? But you guys, your critical infrastructure. And there is definitely a concern that they have the capability and they may decide to strike. And if they do, there's a large concern there that obviously we have for that. So a lot of this comes down to okay, I gave you the scary part, right? There's a lot of bad stuff out there. So how can we help your organizations become more resilient. At the end of the day, water treatment plants are in a semi-unique situation, right? Because you have a life-giving necessity, right? And we want to make sure that you are able to continue to um, deliver water or process water, right? At the end of the day, we need you to be able to do that. And so there's a lot of help out there. And I know that some people in the past have talked about making sure that you're aware of the cybersecurity framework. It just got updated and released to version 2.0 earlier this week. I think it was Monday, actually. So it's been in draft form, so I was aware of it. I just, the guidance I think just came out yesterday. But it's an important thing to understand. The thing that they major change to it was to say, hey, you need to govern this. And the govern aspect is what was added to the framework. And that's something, I was an auditor for 20 years. So I was like, why isn't govern a part of this? And that's, how you make sure that you're doing what you need to do. Are you addressing risks? What kind of processes and policies does your organization have in place to, one, recognize that you have risks, and number two, address them? Right. At the end of the day, that's what we want to make sure you're doing. And then the rest of the cybersecurity framework is, as it has been throughout time, making sure that you can identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover from an incident. Detect is like a really important one, right? Because we want to make sure that if you are being attacked, you can detect it as soon as possible. But also, what happens if you have a vulnerability and you're not aware of it? We want to make sure that you're aware of it as soon as possible as well. And that's why CISA has its known exploited vulnerability list, where we tell you vulnerabilities that we know are currently being exploited by threat actors. And if we're doing scanning for your external IP range, we could tell you if you have any of those that are facing the internet. One caveat to that, so I've got to bring this up. It only works for static IP addresses, right? And why am I telling you that? Because a lot of us will, in water treatment plants, will set up a pump station that's out far in the field, and there's no internet service there. So what we'll do is we'll put a cell phone connection out there, a cellular connection that connects to the PLC so they can run it. The problem is, if that device is not behind a firewall, it can be discovered by the threat actors. But if you have it behind there and you're using one of the cell phone providers, the IP address that you're going to have for that is going to be constantly changing. They don't give you one and you stick with it, right? And that might be something that we need to change in our environment. We may need to be asking for static IP addresses so that we can scan them, so that you can be informed if there's any vulnerabilities, or if you can see any vulnerabilities to those. But not putting them behind firewalls. And oftentimes this is done by third parties and not necessarily the water districts themselves. They'll just put them up there. And then what ends up happening is they get attacked. And we saw that a lot with that last PLC vulnerability that we had with the Israeli-made ones. There are a lot of the ones that were hit were not in the traditional plant. They were on cell phone networks. And we just did not have enough, the protection side of things, but then we also couldn't detect whether those things are open. So that's an area that I think that we need to work on. Now, CISA has a lot of services, and I can't go over all of these together today with you, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of some of the big ones that we have. And then I'm going to turn it over to some of our partners here who we partnered with and who have taken advantage of some of these things. I want to make sure that you're aware of our ransomware incident response guide, especially part 2. It is a step-by-step on if you have ransomware. The first 3 things are super important that you do them in that order and in that way. That gets you to the best position for resiliency and recovery. If you don't follow that way, you're not going to be in the best position to recover. It doesn't mean you're not going to be able to recover, but it does mean you're not going to be in the best position to cover. I want to make sure that you're aware that along with the EPA and CISA and the FBI, we came out with the incident response guide that's specific for water and wastewater sector. And in that guide, CISA is offering to water and wastewater some additional services for network forensic, cloud forensics, and host forensics, and physical forensics. And also automated malware and code and media analysis. It's some of the things that we have that's available to our capabilities, and we want to make sure that they're available to water and wastewater to help you guys out as much as possible in the unfortunate, if you're in an incident, unfortunately. Also want to make sure that you're all part of MSISAC and Water ISAC. I'm sure most of you are, but that is one of our main ways of getting threat intelligence to you, is through MSISAC and Water ISAC. So I want to make sure that you understand that. We do have our own bi-weekly threat briefing, which you can sign up for. You can send me an email and I'll give you the information for that. You just request it, and then once you get on it, it's every 2 weeks. It's a threat briefing that we have that's available to our state, local, tribal, territory folks. We have our cyber performance goals. This is an assessment you can get online with one of our cybersecurity advisors, such as myself, and we will walk through this process with you. We'll go through the questionnaire. It's 34 basic questions, but these are like the basics. If you don't have these, this is the stuff that we really want you to focus in on first, then work on all the other stuff, like multi-factor authentication. That's a big part of that's what's on the cyber performance goals. We know from based on incidents that if you do these things, it will reduce your risk greatly. So we want to make sure that you're at least doing these things. There's a lot of other stuff you should do, but at least these things is going to reduce your risk quite a bit. It's not a full security program. It's not meant to be. It's just to be, make sure that you're doing the very basics. One of the other things that we do and have available to you is vulnerability scanning. So we call it our cyber hygiene service. What we can do is we can scan your external IP address range. And of course, I got asked this all the time, and I said, give me all of your IP addresses that you have that are static that we can scan, and we'll scan them all the time. And it gets started, and the process starts scanning, and we just keep on scanning until you tell us to stop. So once a week, you'll get a report from us telling us what we found. And this is really important because you want to make sure that you're getting those weekly reports, but then also if we're detecting any critical or high vulnerabilities or any known exploited vulnerabilities, we're going to alert you much sooner. And this is an important thing. A good example of that is we had a vulnerability that popped up for one of our, stakeholders that's taking advantage of this. The scan happened at night. They found out about the vulnerability that just popped that night. We called them the next day to let them know, hey, you have this vulnerability, and we know the threat actors are taking advantage of it. So that allowed them to go in and patch that system right away. So that's kind of one of our important things that we want to make sure that you're aware of. It's a free service. All of the services that we have, they're all free to stakeholders. We want to make sure that you are aware of those and take advantage of those, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can for you. The next thing too is a part of our ransomware vulnerability warning pilot. A lot of the information that we get when we're scanning your systems can give us threat intelligence to our greater threat intelligence network that we have. And if your IP addresses show up in any threat intelligence, we can make sure that you're reported to immediately or as soon as possible, right? So if your IP address comes up as having launched an attack or being attacked, then we can certainly let you know much quicker if we have that capability and we know what your IP ranges are. So that's a great benefit to that. I could tell you from this, a lot of folks don't know that as a part of our mandate, it is to notify you of any vulnerabilities you may have or if you're likely to become a victim. So in other words, if we have threat intelligence that somewhere else in the federal government, they tell us and say, hey, we know these bad guys are attacking this agency, we're going to call you, which is kind of weird because I know that most of the time we say, hey, if someone from the government calls, it's probably phishing. In this case, if I'm calling, it's not. So, or one of my colleagues is calling, one of our cybersecurity advisors. So I definitely make sure before you're done with this call, or as soon as you get off this call, make sure you know who your cybersecurity advisor is, right? So if you're in Arizona or Colorado, wherever, let me know. I'll get you to your advisor so that you know who to talk to. And we have a bunch across California. So I can get you that contact information to your local one. You want to know who they are, one, to take advantage of these services, but then two, also if you have an incident or if you're going to get a phone call from them, you want to know who it is before you get the phone call. We do tabletop exercises. This is a really good thing. We can come in and customize them for you. This helps with getting management involved and them to understand. We have a regional training and exercise coordinator, Ashley, and she can help you set that up. In addition to that, we have a national one that can come out and they can make a completely new custom tabletop exercise for you. And it takes different amount of times depending upon if you want to customize or not, and whether we're going to do it here in the region or if we're going to do it at the national level from our national headquarters. And I should say that we are divided up into regions like FEMA is. And so we have the region 9, which is California, Nevada, Arizona, and the Pacific. That's a region that I'm in, and Ashley's our regional one. So if you're in a different state, then you're in a different region and you have different regional folks. That means that you have someone local to you who understands the area, understands you. It's not somebody in Washington, D.C. is going to be calling. It's going to be somebody here. Although my phone number is a Washington, D.C. number because they gave me a cell phone with a 202 phone number. So it'll say Washington, D.C. is calling, but it's me. So, so you want to know. So anyways, whoever it is from us. Another service that we provide is a validated architecture design review. I think that Joffrey is going to talk about that with you guys. They went through that with theirs. They saw some benefit from it. I want to make sure that you're aware of that. But basically what we can do is look at the architecture of your organization, your SCADA systems, your OT network, and kind of come up with some recommendations on what types of things we saw and what kind of things you can do to make it more resilient. We also have, and not part of what I do, but we have protective security advisors who also deal with the physical security of this. When I worked at the city of Livermore, we had a water treatment plant, and we had PSA Brooks, who is here in Northern California, come out and look at our water treatment plant, look at all of our different tanks sites and all of our different pumping stations. So he took a look at those and then came up with a number of different reports on the security of those different locations. And we found a lot of things that we needed to work on. So it was a great investment for us. I want to make sure that we also give you a list of things to do. Whenever possible, recommend that you attend the CISA, MS-ISAC, and Water ISAC threat briefings. I know that you get busy and you don't get to do it, but if you're not getting the threat intelligence, then you're not going to know necessarily what's going on out there and what is the big concern that we're having or that you should be having or what kind of things that you should be looking for. We had a number of incidents where the PLCs got compromised, and they got compromised well after it was known that they were compromised, they had a vulnerability and they need to be patched. Recommend keeping up to date with that so that you're aware of it and not falling behind. You know, it's a bad thing to have, the patch available for 6 months and you still haven't patched it, and then it gets exploited, right? So stay abreast as much as you possibly can. I understand you're all super busy, and I even have a hard time trying to keep up with all of that stuff, and that's my job, right? So make sure that you know who your local cybersecurity and protective security advisor are, right? You want to know us, and if you're in Northern California, I'm probably the guy, or I have some colleagues in the South Bay, Scott, and I have some in the Central Valley, Tim, but we have them across the country. So we have local folks here to help you. If you haven't signed up for our vulnerability scanning or cyber hygiene service, it's free. I mean, just sign up for it. You just get a report. Even if you're already scanning, just have ours, because our threat intelligence gets added to that, which I can't say a whole lot about it other than, hey, it's the federal government's threat intelligence. Do you want that to be informed in the scans? I would think everybody would want to. It seems to be like a no-brainer type of thing, right? You want to have that type of insight into it. Have a CSA such as myself do a cyber performance goals with you, just to go through those 34 controls to make sure that you're doing those things. Schedule a tabletop exercise, go through the process. Make sure you get your executive team in that meeting as well to go through the exercise. You want them to understand what the impact could be and how cyber can impact operations. And this is a great way to make sure everybody's on the same page, everybody understands what's at stake. And then obviously contact your PSA, have them do a physical security assessment. There's no harm in doing it. It's actually a really good thing to do to find out if you have any issues. Do you have issues with fencing? You know, is your fencing appropriate? Do you have issues with your camera systems? Do you have, storage issues? All of those types of things that a PSA is going to look at and can give you information about, and at least it lets you know what your risks are, right? And then you can do an informed decision. At the end of the day, you only have so much budget. And if you have this much cybersecurity stuff that you need to do and this much physical security stuff you need to do, you want to know them all so you can prioritize them. You're not going to be able to get to everything. Everybody understands it. There's only so much money in the bucket. But you want to make sure that you know what all those risks are so that you're addressing the most critical ones, right? Just going by not knowing, you can end up spending money on something that's a low risk when you could have better spent it somewhere else on a high risk, right? So have the assessment, know what you're dealing with, and then schedule a validated architecture design review. We call it VADR. It's like a Star Wars sounding, huh? But we want to make sure that you go through that too, especially if you're looking at any SCADA upgrades or ICS upgrades. It's a good idea to have this done before, so you kind of know where you're at, so you know what you need to fix, so that when you're going through the process of looking towards doing any major upgrades on the ICS systems, that you are planning appropriately. But even if you're not, and maybe you did it a while ago, you may have had a vendor come in and kind of do it for you, but who's to say that vendor gave you the right advice? Now, this is an opportunity for you to validate what they've designed for you if you recently went through that process. So it doesn't hurt to have another assessment done and do it. And find out more, we have a bunch of water resources. If you go to CISA.gov/water, there's a bunch of resources just for you. And like I said, we're here to help you and help you collaborate. And I'm going to turn this over to Bill Johnson from East Bay Mud to tell you about a little bit about what they're doing there and how they're partnering with us here at CISA.
Thank you, Don. I'm going to share my one slide I have. Did that come up?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Don. So I want to emphasize something that Don said. He talked about partnership, right? And I can't emphasize that enough. It's been a really fruitful partnership for East Bay Mud to partner with CISA. And, the CISA's, I can't remember how many years they've been around on, but when they were formed as part of the Department of Homeland Security, they were ramping up on their capabilities and their services. And but they've been recent few years, they've been getting a lot of funding and been providing a lot of really excellent services. And frankly, you saw the long list that Don provided there, and there's so many services that I'm looking forward to taking advantage of. There's just haven't had a chance yet too, but I wanted to highlight a few of the things that we've leveraged from CISA that we found very useful. And Don mentioned the hygiene scanning services, and I agree, it's a no-brainer. Go ahead and sign up for this if you haven't already. You can get a couple different types of scans. We scan our externally facing systems as well as our web applications, and we get those reports, and it really helps us identify any vulnerabilities. Another thing that we've leveraged is the malware analysis. So if we get a piece of malware, we can send it in and have a human look at it. This isn't automated, so it's not super fast, but that's okay. It's somebody looking at it, and we'll get back information about the forensics of it, and it really help us in kind of following up and understanding what it was and what it might have been doing in our environment, et cetera. That's been very useful. Tons of alerts and advisories. We get these every day from CISA on a variety of things. That I found these to be very helpful. And another thing that we've done is we've had a guest speaker. We had Don come during Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. He gave a great presentation. It was very well received by everybody that attended that. Found that very useful, very useful information. A big one that we were fortunate to be involved in is Cyber Sentry. This is a CISA managed threat detection and monitoring service capabilities. It's a hardware and software stack that is implemented in your IT and OT environments. CISA, as Don alluded to, has access to non-public indicators of compromise. So This is like an extra layer of protection for us in our environment. And if anything significant comes up, they'll notify us of this situation. You can go and look at any of these resources on the CISA page. But the Cyber Century process is essentially you send an email in and express your interest, and somebody from that group will get back to you. And this is a service that's offered to all 16 critical infrastructure sectors. So we were fortunate enough to be one of the few water agencies to have implemented this recently. If you're fortunate enough to be added to the program, it does take a little while, several months to get involved, and set up. But we're very excited about that. And I'll just echo what Don said. Meet with Don or whoever your CSA is, and they're super helpful. I can't say that enough. I'm really pleased with our partnership and looking forward to many more years of that. So that's about it for me, and I'm going to pass it over to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Great. I'm Jeffrey Brown from Alameda County Water District. I basically run the SCADA systems, all the OT systems here. We have basically 3 different type of water plants here, and that's what I support, and about 6 or 7 SCADA systems. So I have a lot of different things I'm touching. So this came to us. Actually, the IT department came over to us and said, look, how about this beta process? And to be honest, I'm like, what is this? Another system, another scan, another service? Because we've had several services. And to be honest, I wasn't that excited initially. But then let me step back just for a second and talk about where we came from. 10 years ago, frankly, I didn't think about security that much. I let IT handle it all. IT was our security. They were our network. They were everything. And then probably about 6-7 years ago, we started to migrate away from IT hardware. We started to separate from IT and OT. That was kind of our process. And so in that, you can't just do it all at once. You have to kind of do it a step at a time. And so what we've done is basically taken that. Let me make sure I'm on here. We've taken that and said, okay, how do we prove our progress? And we've got this plan. We're kind of moving down this plan. How do we prove our progress? And so from my perspective, this was an opportunity to prove our progress. How much progress have we made since the last time we got one of these things done? So that was a big deal. Thinking about how this will benefit me, how will it benefit my organization, and in talking to CISA and the people on that side, it was clear to me that not everybody was fully invested. I mean, when they met with customers, they would say, yes, I'm going to do this, but they wouldn't really share all the information. I made a decision kind of at that point that I will expose everything. I will share all that I can with this because I wanted the best analysis possible. And I don't think I could have got that if I would have hidden some of my information. So I wanted to make sure that I shared all that I could in that process. So we had an early meeting talking about the process, talking about the people involved. And one of the things that's important is to say what your needs are. And here at Alameda County, we have at least one unique need that I found difficult to assess. As we've had other cyber services come to us, none of them knew anything about Citrix services. We are a Citrix house. We deploy applications using Citrix, and most of these cyber people did not know Citrix. And if you don't know Citrix, how can you do a good job on analyzing it? So I said up front, if you can't bring a Citrix person here, I don't want you. And I said that up front, and that was kind of a big deal. And so, and they said, yep, we got a guy. He's going to be an expert. We're going to bring him. So that was a thing that really sold me, that they're actually going to bring expertise that fit my environment. That was really a big deal. There was a bunch of data collection. So part of data collection is network stuff, but some of it's just documents. Do you have reasonable documentation for your network? And you can't just dump everything you got on them. You have to be selective and send them stuff that gives them a good idea of what you have without inundating them with lots of documents. So I made sure I tried to do that. The network data, I actually collected network data for them. They give you instructions on how to collect the data, and I'll just tell you, follow the directions, follow the instructions exactly, because if you don't, you're not going to get it right. So I followed the instructions and I collected lots of data. I went to every one of my major sites and collected 24 hours of data from those sites and uploaded to their secure portal. So now they've got all this data from, what we're doing, what we have, and again, any questions there as I'm going down the path? Okay. Is your system overview clear and detailed? Because if all they're receiving is a bunch of data, a bunch of spreadsheet,
maybe we need to come up with an
somebody's
idea or something and present it to them.
Stephanie, will you please unmute? Okay. All right. So what was the result? Well, one of the things that came, when they came, they collected our data and they came to visit us about a month later. And the thing that really came to the table was the multidisciplinary review. We had OT experts who were PLC centric. We had Citrix experts who were, of course, Citrix experts. We had network people. We had firewall people. We had all kind of different experts who came to our site for the review. So I thought that was very powerful. OT specific, not everybody's OT knowledgeable. And so the OT specific people were very valuable because I could have one-on-one conversations with them about, what they saw, looking at the data, asking them questions about this and that. Look at the network data. So they did generate a lot of what I would call technician reports with data about what can talk to what can do what. Talked about policies. I gotta say, that's like my least favorite part is policies. And so we talked about policies, about how important they were, what we needed to focus on. Then we had a discussion review of the results. We had actually a couple of different discussions. One discussion was, I call it a technical discussion. That was primarily me and the technical people of my team, and we talked with their technical people. And that was really to kind of get a deep down understanding of certain concepts and certain things that we were concerned about. Then they had an executive presentation. So we basically set aside about 1 hour, and they presented a presentation to our executive staff, and they talked about where we were. And then about a month later from that comes the formal report. The formal report has all the details that they talked about, plus more information. There's kind of like more information specific to you. And there's also some information kind of generically about things you guys should be thinking, we should be thinking about. Full technical data details, in the full format, format. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead into the next slide, and I'm going to let David talk a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. So my name is David Yu. I'm the IT manager for AAWD. For my part, I wanted to share some of the items that you can expect to see in the final report from CISA if you choose to engage with them to do your vulnerability assessment. Like Jeffrey mentioned, the report is called the Validated Architectural Design Review report, also known as the VADAR report. I was just thinking last night, right? If you put in the word Darth in front of VADAR, you get a Darth Vader report, which sounds pretty ominous. That's my joke for the day here. So as part of our engagement with CISA, we had to determine what was in scope. So for ACWD, it included all 4 of our SCADA sites and headquarters. Fortunately, the report showed that we had a number of strengths. The top ones that come to mind had to do with redundancy. For ACWD, we had multiple firewalls, we had backup power, we had redundant data links to our remote sites. And they also identified that the relationship between IT and OT was very strong. My group and Jeffrey's team, we work together very well, almost on a daily basis. The other important thing they identified was the support that we got from executive management. And I can't point this and make this point strong enough, right? Our top management knows that they need to invest in cybersecurity, invest in those tools to make us more resilient. Regarding the discovery table, this is really your weaknesses, right? I want to not go into specifically talking about the weaknesses they discovered for ACWD, but know that when they do come in to do your assessment, they rely on NIST 853. These are the security controls, right? That include access controls, auditing and accountability, your contingency planning, configuration management, and the thing that Jeffrey doesn't like, documented policies and procedures. Again, as part of the assessments, CISA will also use open source information, such as looking up your domain in the WHOIS database. They will even scan your entire public websites, to see if you've accidentally published some sensitive information out there. And one interesting discovery that I found out was CISA was able to find a partial network diagram that was shown during one of our board meetings that was published in our agency's website. So obviously we went back and looked at those websites and took down those information. So, overall, I think we found our engagement with CISA very valuable. Again, it's a free service. We will continue our partnership with them. And in fact, in a couple of months, we will have a follow-up meeting so that we can discuss some of the mitigation procedures and tasks that we put in place to meet those risks that they identified when they did the study with us. So yeah, I encourage everybody to take advantage of their services. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Don, Bill, Jeffrey, David, for this fascinating presentation. I think this was very useful. We're now ready to begin our interactive Q&A session. Nathan will serve as the chat room moderator and will read the questions from the group. So please send your questions in and we will try to get to them. If we, for some reason, run out of time, we will send out an email Q&A afterwards. Nathan?
Yeah, so a couple questions for you, Don. What is the best way for somebody to get in touch with CISA if they haven't done so before? What's the best way to kind of start the dialogue?
That's a great question, Nathan. A lot of people ask that question too. Is like, where do I get started? And the best thing to do is to reach out. You can go to, if you're not in my area, if you're in my area, call me. That's how you do it. I like to think of myself more as a concierge. I'm here to help. So you contact me and I'll figure out where you need to go, right? And that includes with other federal agencies too. So we know that there's other federal agencies we partner with that may have services that may help, and we will bring them in if necessary. But first thing to do is to reach out to us. If you don't know who yours is, you can always reach out, go to our website, CISA.gov, and at the bottom of the page, there's a phone number or there's an email address, central@cisa.gov. If you send anything there, they will route it to the right place. So that is like the the big email box, the big sorting pile. So if you send it there, we will get it to you. But if you're in California or in Arizona or Nevada or the Pacific, contact me. I can get you connected to the right person. If you're outside of that area, again, go to the main website and you can or go to central@cisa.gov and they will get you to the right person.
Nathan, I think Robert Clark has his hand up and maybe has a question.
Yeah,
Robert, you're muted. Okay.
I've got a question. We have our IT work, if you will, contracted out with the company that we've had for a long time. Senior managers here at the Water District kind of share responsibilities for different tasks. I'm the operations superintendent, so I get to look at the SCADA stuff. I also have a financial manager. She looks at like cell phone use in our phone systems. Donald, I think you are our advisor. I think you are. Anyhow, we've signed up for the bi-weekly reports, but for the life of me, my brain's telling me we did the VADAR thing, but how would I find out if we did that and where could I find that information? As a manager, I've given that responsibility to IT, but it sounds like I really need to get more involved with that reporting and get that information more directly.
Yeah, so I can look that up for you, Robert. It's in our system somewhere, so I'd have to probably reach out to our VADAR team to see if you're on the list. They have a list of everybody they've done. I don't have ready access to it, but
Okay.
I can check for you. The other thing too is I agree with that. You should be involved, especially if you outsource.
Yeah.
If you outsource, you have to have this idea of who's verifying they're doing what they're supposed to be doing at the end of the day, right? And I can tell you from experience, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but when I worked at the city of Livermore and we had the consultants come in, they were trying to sell us a Cadillac, right? And they were going to charge us appropriately to that. And I was like, no, you're not going to do all that. They didn't even ask if we had cybersecurity or if IT was going to be involved. They just said, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. We're going to set up these firewalls and we're going to do that. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. The city has a standard for firewalls and there's a reason for that standard. So I had to, luckily I was involved at the beginning of the process when we started doing the SCADA master plan. But had I not been in there, then they would have just run roughshod. And then we ended up saving quite a bit of money, actually. I think on the first round, it was like over $200,000 we saved on hardware, buying it ourselves rather than buying it from them. So, which that's a whole nother financial control issue that we had because the one that advised us what we should buy was going to also sell it to us. And I was like, well, that's a problem right there, right? There's no separation of duties, right? If you're going to advise us what to buy, then I'm not buying it from you. But then when we looked at it, they were selling us a Cadillac and we're like, do we really need to have that level of redundancy? We need to have redundancy, yes, but not N+4, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's a little bit ridiculous.
All right, well, I'll follow up with you guys and figure it out. Thank you.
Nathan?
Yeah, one more question for you, Don. Can you provide a little bit more information on the Cyber Sentry program?
Yeah, that's a good question. Bill did a good job telling you about it. So let me give you a little bit of a background on it. It's a pilot program right now, and it's not available to everybody. But if you're interested in it, you can definitely hear about it. They'll give you a presentation on it. They'll ask you if you are interested, and then they'll go back and see if you fit into the framework for the pilot. And if you do, then they would invite you to join in on it. So that's where it currently is. Now, the pilot program is designed to do a proof of concept, right? So, we get funded from Congress. We have to go back to Congress and say, hey, look, we have this program and it's really being beneficial to critical infrastructure and they want to keep it or whatever. And then we can get the funding for it, right? It's all based on money, right? But it also has to have a return on impact or return on investment. So we want to make sure that it's doing it. So this pilot program is trying to work that out. It is basically a black box. And by black box, I mean, you can't tell what's inside of it, right? Not physically necessarily. We put a device in your network that monitors all of your network traffic. And then our SOC team monitors that. and looks for any types of threat indicators that come from our threat intelligence, right? So you're getting the benefit of the federal government's threat intelligence monitoring your network. So there's a big plus on that side. The big minus that a lot of people have an issue with is that the federal government's watching your network, right? So the biggest challenge has not been the technology, has been getting it past a legal review and getting, especially on local government side, getting someone to be able to sign off on it and want to sign off on it, because basically, yes, the federal government's monitoring your network. We're not scary like Big Brother like everybody thinks we are, but it does scare some people that we would be monitoring all that. So they have that concern, but as you know, working for a local government, all the stuff that is on the network is not considered private anyway. So, having us do it just adds the ability of us having insight into it and then giving you actionable stuff. So what would end up happening is if there was an incident or we noticed something on the network, we would contact you, give you a terminal that you could log into to see what threat stuff we were seeing so that you could then address it. So with that comes the, what do you call it? The agreement that you will share information with us so that, because if we see something and it looks like it's an attack, we want you to tell us if it was or wasn't, right? Because it doesn't do us any good if we see something and you don't want to tell us whether it really was an incident or not, right? That doesn't help us help other folks. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that all critical infrastructure is being protected. So that's what our goal is in doing that. That's kind of it in a nutshell. But there's a lot of more nuances to it. And if you're interested in it, I set you up with a team and they'll come out and they'll set up a Teams meeting and they'll go over it with you so you can kind of understand what it is. They're looking for a certain number in each of the critical infrastructure 16 sectors. They're looking for representation in each one of those. So that they have a few from water, they have a few from transportation, they have a few from this and a few from that, so that when they come back to do their return on investment, they can say, hey, look, here's the impact that we have across all sectors, so that's what they're looking to do.
Great.
And then last question for you, Don. Does CISA provide any support or services after a cyber incident occurs?
Yes, most of our stuff is pre and during. Afterwards, it's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? That's, I made this joke at another conference and somebody thought it was really funny, so I'm going to make it here too. CISA is passed, Congress passed it, and you're going to have to report any cyber incidents you have, not any, but what level that is has not been decided yet, but that's coming this year. You're going to have to report it. I always say, you're going to call me before, you're going to call me after. So call me first, right? Let's do like Alameda County Water did and go through a VADR review and see what we can do to better strengthen your existing system. Let's go like East Bay Mud is doing and try a pilot program that we may be launching. And that's another thing I should point out is that if you have a relationship with me, headquarters said, hey, we have this cyber sentry thing. We need some good candidates for it. Who do you think in your area would be good for this? They called me and I said, well, here's a couple of my water districts I know that would really be interested in it. And so Bill jumped at it, right? So that's another thing to say for that. But on the incident part of it, like during the boom, left a boom, right a boom, during the boom, we're there to kind of help. And I was doing that just before I got on this call. I was dealing with another organizations having a boom. And what we do to help with that is make sure that we coordinate with all the other federal agencies and how we can help with you. Our role is to also provide advice for you, advisory services. We don't make recommendations, because we understand that when the federal government makes a recommendation, it's less of a recommendation and more of a, you should really be doing that. Otherwise there's legal stuff. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not trying to pretend to be one, but when we say something, it carries a lot of weight. So we think we reword it to say things that you should consider, right? So you don't get on the hook. We don't want to say something to you and you not do it, and then all of a sudden someone sues you because you didn't listen to us, right? So if that ever came up, so we always say these are things that you should consider. After an incident, we would help you, if you're still in an incident, we'd help you get connected. Cal SIC is there for you guys. They can put boots on the ground for you. If the incident is such that it's large enough, or it does have an impact to national security, we have a team that we may offer to send out to you. That's a very rare thing because we only have so many teams, and we really leverage those for unique situations. And so I don't want to give anybody the false hope that, hey, CISA has a incident response team. It's very rarely used. We use it all the time on the federal agency side of things, but for local government, it is used sparingly, and typically it's related to something that is either very large or there's an advanced persistent threat actor that we're trying to, get more information on or something like that. But it's going to be a very limited type of engagement. It's not something we do all the time.
Nathan, we have one more question in chat.
Don, does CISA provide water industry summary updates about incidents?
So we don't really comment on incidents per se. Like if you had an incident, we're not going to say, hey, so-and-so had an incident and this is what it's like. What we will do is explain what we've seen normally in the industry, right? So we'll say, we know this PLC is being attacked. We know water agencies have this type of issue. We try to stay away. We never do anything that attributes it to you. So we're very, very, we try to avoid that as much as possible. Even if it's in the news, we don't try to even comment on it. What we do like to do, though, is put that information out to Water ISAC and MS ISAC for them to then distribute appropriately. So there is some case studies that may be done, but they're usually done and redacted to the point that you don't necessarily know who they are. But definitely they will go over the anatomy of the attack and that type of thing. Sometimes that's in our advisories. Sometimes that gets pushed out to MS ISAC and Water ISAC. So there's a couple different ways that we have things, but I don't know that we have like any type of summary like for every type of incident that's out there. It's more of like, trends and what we're seeing in their threat actors doing. So I hope that helps. But I should say to add to that, it's super important that you share indicators with us and stuff with that, because that's how we get it back into the cycle. So there's this whole cycle that we have of threat intelligence. We have to have inputs so we can have outputs. And so the outputs are what you take advantage of. That's the advisories that you hear about. That's when the FBI, us, EPA, whoever that puts out an advisory and says, hey, look out for this PLC or this vulnerability or this indicator of compromise. So all of that information, we get that from you guys. So if you don't share with us, we don't get it out, right? So when you share with us, you help prevent somebody else from being the next victim. And sometimes these things happen very quickly. And so I know that you're sometimes in the incident response process, but if you can share indicators of compromise early on with us as you discover them, and it could be as easy as just sending me an email and say, hey, our incident responders say, this is an example of an indicator of compromise. I send that up to our central, and then they take that and process it. And then it'll end up in Water ISAC and MS ISAC to push it out to everybody else. But if we don't have the input, we don't get that. A good example, sometimes people say, well, I get a lot of small stuff, and so I don't want to bother you with a bunch of small stuff. But sometimes the small stuff is indicators of larger things. If you're getting certain types of an attack, you may not be the only water district having that. And so you can go to Water ISAC and share the information with them too, right? And you can sort it out with other agencies, or you can just contact the other agencies that are here and just say, hey, is anybody else seeing this? And then obviously if other organizations are seeing it, then we want to know about it, because then it might be a much larger problem. But if it's a smaller one, then, then you just told us, and then we file it, right? It's not a big deal. It's not a loss to you guys, not necessarily a loss to us. So I guess my point is share more frequently. And we are sharing more frequently. I mean, there was a lot of criticism early on with the federal government saying, hey, we need to share back and forth. And a lot of local government, when I was in local government, we're like, okay, where's the sharing from the federal side? Well, that's what we have MSISAC set up for. Where do you think they get their information? Right. Well, a lot of it comes from us. And we have the other ISACs. But then also us notifying you if you have a vulnerability or pre-ransomware notifications that we have. That's another way we get information to you. Plus advisories. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome. All right, Vladimir, all yours.
Thanks, Nathan. And once again, thank you so much to our esteemed presenters. Today, we've delved deep into critical nexus between our industries and the imperative need for robust cyber defense mechanisms. I hope that our conversations have illuminated the indispensable role that collaboration with CISA plays in fortifying all of our cyber defenses. In closing, I urge each of you to reach out to your local CISA representative to start the dialogue. I also urge you to carry forward the insights gained from today's discussion and to champion a culture of cyber resilience within your respective agencies. Thank you once again for your unwavering commitment and dedication to this vital cause. Hopefully, with our collective effort, we will emerge stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to confront the cyber challenges that lie ahead for all of us. So once again, thank you very much for being here, and we will see you at our next webinar. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.